Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
Speak Nerd and Enter. Welcome.
Hello.
We have K-Man, Rich, and the Aurelian.
Hey.
All right. Mark,
Look at this camera thing.
we were talking a moment ago, just before we got on, about the tour de force that you got to see. Everyone's wondering, is it worth it? The Expendables.
That's right. The biggest release of the year. It was so big, they didn't release it in the summer with the summer blockbusters, and they didn't hold it for the winter blockbusters. It came out now in the no man's land of movie releases. So yes, the wife and I were looking at the movie things yesterday, and it was like, oh, we're going to see Dumb Money or Expendables, but Dumb Money wasn't at the theater that we were at, or like that's right near our house, and we'd have to drive further away. And so we're like, I kind of want to see both. Let's just go see Expendables. So we went, and if you've seen the first three, you know exactly what to expect, right? This is let's take all the big action stars from the 80s, from our youth, and jam them into a movie, and kind of it's designed to be a send up of peak action movie.
Now, before
80s, early
you
90s.
give more, I'm going to place my bets. I'm going to place my bets now that Mark, you liked it because it was exactly what you expected it to be. And it hit on all pistons. It was firing on all cylinders for you, just like the 80s raucous humor and fun that you remembered. Very kitschy, popcorn-esque, and you left there feeling fulfilled.
Sean, you are 100% wrong.
What?
I went into Expendables not expecting much, right? It's the Expendables. It's a dumb action movie. Like all I want to do is turn my brain off and watch some cool action movies. This movie was awful. It was terrible.
I've seen it, and I give it 5 K-Mans.
5 K-Mans. Oh my god.
Now that's on a scale. That's on a scale of 500. So
500, yeah. Like
when you're
Jason Statham and Sly Stallone are supposed to be like the two best friends that kind of are always cutting each other down in this movie, and the dialogue is so stilted and dumb, and it felt forced, right? The gunplay was. And again, I'm not going into this kind of movie looking for John Wick level of like cool, stylized, plausible gunplay. It's a send up of the 80s action movies, and at one point they jump on these like off-road motorcycles that have machine guns built into the front of them, and they're literally driving around a ship shooting at each other on these motorcycles. And I'm like, okay, I'll buy that because it's a dumb 80s action movie. Right? I mean, and I was just like, all right, that's the dumbest thing ever. But in a movie like that, that's the kind of stuff that you expect. But everything else, it was so poorly done that, the dialogue was awful. The action was kind of like, felt a little phoned in. You know what I'm saying? Like there was very few things that were, every once in a while, there'd be something you were like, that was cool. But it was like 3 or 4 different little set piece action-y, like, part of the sequence, not the whole sequence. And like I say, coming out of that movie, I was just like, I had low expectations going in, and they were not even met. So I am not trying to be a harsh critic, but it was awful. It was a terrible movie.
I am curious though, because I've seen the previews for this movie.
So their campaign actually worked.
It did. My wife even read the little text thing because she's like, "What do you want to see?" And I said, "I'd see this or that." And she looked them up and read the little text thing on the phone, like, "Oh, the team's back doing blah blah blah." And she's like, "Oh, that does sound kind of cool. I'd go see that." So from the text description, it works. Go ahead, Kelly.
No, but I'm just thinking, like, you're there at the movie theater, and I mean, I've seen the previews of this, and if I'm going to the movie theater and I see I wanted to see movie A, but movie A is not available, and this is movie B. I mean, was there not anything else to do in the vicinity of where this theater was? I mean, is there not like a Barnes and Noble or?
Yeah, it was at the mall. I almost went to My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 halfway through. Let me tell you, like, that should set the stage for how bad this movie was.
That does, actually. So, that's pretty bad.
I do have a question, Mark, about the film. One of the actors that's in it, one of the new Expendables, is Iko Uwais. He's from The Raid and he's in
Gladiator.
Yeah.
I'm throwing a movie out there.
How did he do? I actually really like him. He's done bit parts around after the raid.
Here's the thing. I'm not sure. I think if it's the actor that I'm thinking of, he's the bad guy in the movie.
He's Indonesian.
Not one of the Expendables. But there's another guy of the if it's the other guy you're talking about, because I'm not familiar with the name and the face of the actor you just referred to. So there's another guy who is like, spoiler alert, whatever. The guy shows up. Jason Statham is like looking for this guy who was a friend of Sly Stallone's, and he's now living a life of peace.
Already,
like,
I'm not going to watch this.
I'll take you to the battle, but if I let the warrior off the chain, I'm not sure I'll be able to get him back under control, kind of thing.
Oh.
And then of course he, at the right moment, lets the warrior off the chain and saves the day. But bullshit. So I'm not sure, but the one actor I did recognize his face was one of the bad guys, and like he was fine, when he's running around with like sharpened Tom Fuzz that he's like stabbing people with and stuff, and the other guys using kukris and it was fine. They were all fine-ish, but it again, my issue is not with any of the actors really.
I think, by the way, that's how the European country got its name. It's not Finnish. It's not Finnish. It's fine-ish.
Fine-ish. Yeah, like the actors were all fine. It was really just like this was a terrible script. You know what I mean? Like it just was not well written. It was, and the thing is, you spent the money on these big name actors. You spent the money on the explosions and the gunplay and the fight choreography, but you couldn't put it together with anything that resembled chemistry. You know what I mean? Like it had the parts, but it didn't have the chemistry.
What was the budget for the movie? Do you know?
I don't know, but I have
$400 million.
It's the most expensive movie ever produced.
And it got 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
let's see what the budget was for that.
He played a guy named Ramit. I don't know who that is. So
I'm not going to remember any character's name in this whole movie.
Okay.
There was the bad guy and the peaceful guy.
That's really saying something about how bad a movie is when you can't even be bothered to remember who the bloody characters were in the movie.
Yeah. Okay. So reportedly, $100 million, which included production cost and not the print and a publicity budget.
So figure about 150 million. That's pretty cheap for a movie like that, actually.
They made The Matrix on $100 million.
Yeah, that was in 2000 and what? 2000.
Right, and in today's dollars, that's like $500 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, like I say, this movie it was. And I've said it before. I'm like, the script is free, right? Spending money on actors and spending money on special effects and fight choreography and explosions, like those all have a cost in filmmaking. But what doesn't have a cost is putting words on a page, right? Somebody's got to design this story, and again, with such a low bar as the Expendables, I'm not looking for an amazing story. I just need an excuse to watch some gunplay, right? And so like the bar is set so low. I did not come into this movie thinking I was gonna like see the the entertainment event of the year, but then to have those low expectations not even close to met means you are really making a bad movie. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is one of those ones I would have expected to see direct to Blockbuster without any stars in it. You know what I mean?
Direct to Blockbuster now that all the Blockbusters have closed.
For all our younger viewers, that used to be a shop that you could go and rent videos from.
Yeah, there was a store that had movies on.
I think everybody knows this.
No, not anyone.
Some people don't.
Everybody watching this knows this.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, see, I was about to make a joke about being direct to Netflix, but Netflix has had some pretty good. This movie came direct to Netflix. Like they've had some good movies, So even direct to streaming now is not necessarily a comment on the quality of the movie. Whereas with the Blockbuster, it kind of was. Like
Netflix's issue is their ability to renew a show. They'll make a good show. They just won't keep it.
Right.
Speaking of Netflix, if you have not seen the new animated Gamera series on Netflix, for all you kaiju fans out there, it's pretty good. I really enjoyed it.
And Gamera, for those who don't know, is who Rich would use in the Apocalypse as his right-hand man.
Correct.
Because of his relationship to children.
his friend. You are.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. And to my knowledge, no children were harmed in the filming of Expendables 4.
That's a shame. That usually seems to be like a feature in those films. That
right. But let me give you an example of the movie. So in the beginning of the movie, Sly rolls over to Jason Statham's house, and he's having a fight with Megan Fox's girlfriend or whatever. And he's like, hey, I need you to come help me do this thing, like this ring that I have. I guess he's got a ring that he wears. It's this big, like, demon head or something. He's like, oh, I lost this ring in a bet. Yeah, let me tell the story. He lost this ring in a bet, and he's got it. So he takes Jason Statham over to the bar to, like, get it back. And they go to the bar, and there's this, like, I forget what they called him, some short guy. And they called him, like, I don't know, Biggie Smalls or something stupid like that. And the guy's like, no, you can't have the ring. And so Jason Statham gets, if you've seen the trailer, he gets those brass knuckles, and he beats up 4 or 5 guys at the bar, and they get the ring back. And it's supposed to be like, I don't know, showing this buddy dynamic between the two of them that was kind of dumb. Anyway, fast forward to the end. At some point, Sly Stallone, his character, like, gets in a plane crash and dies, and they have a funeral for him, and turns out he faked his death for plot reasons or whatever. But and so when he shows up at the end to save the day, he's like, "Whoa, we thought you were dead. How'd you do that?" And he goes, "Oh." And so apparently he took the small guy and, like, dressed him up like him, put the ring on him or whatever. So he murdered this guy for losing a bet. And had him crash in his plane and burn to death, because they show him, like, pull the guy out, and the guy kind of wakes up as the plane is getting ready to crash. And I'm just like, you straight up murdered a guy for no reason other than, like, what? He was a jerk and he lost a bet. And this is the level of writing that I'm talking about. If you're going to, like, murder a guy, he should deserve it. And not, you lost a bet to him thumb wrestling. I'm not making this up. He lost a thumb wrestling bet with this guy, and he took your ring and was, I don't know, a jerk about it.
Now, this brings up a question, because talking about the writing and all that stuff. Helena sent me an email the other day asking for our opinions on this stuff. And this is actually one of the people who's on the list. The best written characters of all time, right? And one of them that they have on there is Rocky, which is Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
How do you go, which I think is good. I think Rocky was a very well-written character. I actually enjoyed the writing in that quite a lot. But I don't understand how you go from that to then this. And he did that quick, man. I mean, if you look at his arc, he went from Rocky to First Blood. Now, First Blood was good. First Blood, and I understand a lot of that is from the editing, but the speech at the end, the monologue he has at the end, is really well done. And you have Copland, which was, in my opinion, kind of a sleeper. I mean, that was really a good movie. I enjoyed that one a lot. And De Niro, and I don't know how that didn't get more play, but I thought that was very well done. But then you counter that with things like Demolition Man, or Expendables, as an example, or Judge Dredd, that kind of stuff. I don't,
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, Cliffhanger too.
Yeah.
And Cliffhanger had John Lithgow. Now,
Rambo
John Lithgow has very few clunkers in his.
That was the first time I remember seeing him as a bad guy. He makes a great bad guy, but because you're used to him being funny.
But he played a funny bad guy.
Yeah.
But see, I think that becomes detrimental to a character sometimes. If you have a history doing X, then trying to play a different character, people still see you as X, right? So John Lithgow trying to be a bad guy. I mean, you can try to mesh the two, but it becomes difficult. It becomes tricky. And I think that's the thing that hits Sly Stallone. Okay, now, I'm no big fan of Stallone's movies. He's, like you say, he's done a few that were pretty good. And then there's been a lot of stinkers, if I'm honest. But I think in a lot of these cases, somebody just needs a payday. That's the only thing that defines it. There's no way any one of those actors looked at a script for this movie and said, oh, this is going to be great. Nobody
You don't
ever
think it
said
might
Right,
that.
and that's what I mean, though. Like, we're not trying to make Rocky. Rocky is, you can't make Rocky without Sly Stallone because he wrote it. I don't know if he was actually also the director or whatever, but that was his passion project, right?
Yeah.
Because they tried to get someone else to play Rocky, and he's like, no, this is going to be me. And so Rocky is entwined with Sly Stallone, and that's part of the reason it's so good. Like, he did that movie, and he's like, this is me. This is my story, kind of thing that he wanted to tell.
That was even his dog.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So, like, like Rocky is a passion project. I don't think Expendables 1, 2, 3, or 4 are anybody's passion project. It's like, hey, let's put a bunch of things that people like together in a movie.
I put it to you like this. It was released during the strike so that none of the actors would be forced to go on a talk show and have to promote it.
So I would like to say that nothing tops Stallone's performance as Marion Cobretti. Nothing. That is the top of his game.
Oh, in Cobra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not his
Stop or my mom will shoot. Yeah.
What's the one where he plays the gangster? He's actually pretty funny. Where
it's like a show or whatever, right?
No, he's talking about Oscar.
Oscar,
yeah.
Yeah.
Really like
He's on a show right now where he plays
Oscar.
like
Actually, I like. Yeah, that's the
Tim Curry in
the
it.
spin-off of whatchamacallit. Yeah, Tim Curry was in that. And what is her name? Aunt May and from My Cousin Vinny as well.
Marissa Tomei.
Thank you. Yeah, she's in that as his daughter. That was one of the first movies I saw with her. I actually enjoyed that movie quite a bit. I like that one. Now, one of the other ones here, I'll tell you the list they got. Okay, so you got that. You got Hannibal Lecter. I think Hannibal Lecter is written okay, but I don't think it's one of the best ever. I think that's one of the best ever performances, but I don't think it's one of the best written characters.
In that original Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins' performance was
and I think what's his face they had play him in Manhunter was good too.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, my dad loved that movie when I was a kid, and I watched it about a dozen times.
Well, Manhunter. Remember when that came out, Mark? We were all about the Glazer safety slugs because of that.
Yeah.
Because we knew about Glazer safety slugs. It was the fact they had them in the movie. We're like, oh, that's
Mercury tip bullet.
Yeah. How'd that
so cool?
Sealed with wax.
And then they got Anton Chigurh. Now that one I think was actually one of the. I would say that's one of the best written characters there. And if you contrast that, his character with Hannibal Lecter, two brilliant performances, but very different in the writing. Chigurh I would say, is much more realistic.
I think the best written character is Tom Bombadil. Now, granted, it was deleted from the movie for time.
100%.
But
100%. Thank you, Kelly, for fulfilling my dreams.
You're welcome.
I really like.
Why do you have to wind him up?
I really like Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York. Very well written. I thought
that is well written. Yeah. But
Bill
you know
the
what?
Butcher, yeah.
I think anything where you have Daniel Day-Lewis as the actor, I mean, he's going to elevate whatever you've done. He's also not going to do a movie like Expendables.
Christian.
Now, see, they also have Inigo Montoya. I don't think it was one of the best written characters ever.
No,
not at all. I enjoyed the performance and I enjoyed the character.
Right. Well, I think it was well written from the standpoint of you understood this character's motivation. He always acted true to form. He was honorable. He was seeking revenge. Like if you're trying to convey why is this character here and what is his motivation, they did a really good job of that. There's no ambiguity about who he is and what he's doing. So like that part was well written, but yeah, I don't know that he's like the best villain we've ever seen. I'm using air quotes.
Well, not villain, best written character is what they're saying. Best written character.
Like I said, it's a solidly written character.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I don't think it's the best written character, but like what he's there for and why, and it's his dialogue is lean. There's not a lot of extra stuff there.
That's the thing about Princess Bride.
Vizzini was great.
He was, but that's the thing I like about Princess Bride. Like you said, you can't say it better. That was an efficiently written movie,
right?
And I don't mean that like an insult. I mean that was really very efficient in how it was done. Quick, to the point, got you on board. You were ready to go. Didn't belabor anything. Just kept moving.
Yeah, and funny.
Yeah, very funny. You got to admit though that a lot of that was because of the scene with Billy Crystal too. He, he punched it up quite a bit. I loved his performance in there.
Cary Elwes also excellent performance in that. I mean,
yeah. Well, they all had great ones, but I mean, his was, of course, I think a real standout that way, as far as the humor part. Rorschach, they had Rorschach on the list. I'd say, yeah,
very good, very well done. Although a lot of his stuff was written for him by Alan Moore already, so it was just basically.
See, that's right, and so I don't know.
So Alan Moore gets the credit for that.
Yeah,
he does, and in all honesty, it wasn't written for a movie. And so I don't know how much you can put into that, but yeah, it's a great written character.
They actually
Dr. Manhattan. So
instead of doing storyboards, they actually used the comic as the storyboards. They didn't actually create storyboards for that film, which is shows you how tight the writing was on the comic.
And it makes it tougher to say that's one of the best ones for the movies because the actual author didn't want it made for the movies, but since he was put in the movies. I'll say yeah, absolutely, yeah. Hans Landa, they had him on there.
Bastards. Yep.
Would you say though that was because of the writing or the performance? Because
I got to give it both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the performance was amazing, and that actor was the only guy in the world that could really play that role because of the number of languages that he spoke and whatever. But nobody can deny that guy is a great actor. Like he was given his shot on the larger stage with that role. I'm not sure what his background was before that, but like, boy, is he good. And he's been good in everything that I've seen him in. But that dialogue was amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just really, really well written. And that was one of those kind of, the two came together so perfect. It's iconic now. You know what I mean? Him with that pipe sitting at the table and how that scene goes from friendly to ominous over the course of it. That is masterfully done.
It was masterfully done. And it was. I think I'm more on the side of the performance part because if you have a different actor in there, would the writing still have come through? Whereas Rorschach, for instance, if you have a different person playing that part, I think you still get the better part of Rorschach coming through because of how it's written. You just can't escape it. Yeah. With Hans, it took someone who was very adept, like you said, a 1 in a million kind of thing, to be able to really bring that to life.
I don't know. I think in certain characters that are really well done, and there are quite a few, you can have certain actors that will actually detract from the writing just because of the inability to bring that out, right? So I think you have to be a bit deliberate, right?
I would agree.
I'm sitting here thinking to myself that there's just some actors that you're going to write a particular way because you have to write to the skill level of the person performing the task, I think. That you just can't, just because a person's an actor doesn't mean that they can really play a part.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only reason I say that with Rorschach is because I think so much about the moment he's in the jail and he's talking to the psychiatrist, or he's in prison, he's talking to the psychiatrist, and he's remembering when he became Rorschach, right? That whole scene. I don't know that there's any way, and again, this wasn't written for a movie, so I don't know how much this actually applies to that list, but it is what it is. There's no escaping what that character is. It's almost like whatever actor you put in there, they're going to have to find that same interpretation because there's no other way to interpret it. That's the only reason I say it with Rorschach. I agree with you. I agree with you that an actor can definitely take away from a role, and it would have been better with so and so, or kind of. I definitely do. I just think that's one of those, and maybe that's why I said it with that one, is because it never was meant for a movie. Is that I just don't see any other way to interpret that one. So I think that's kind of a unicorn character, maybe. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Which brings us to Morpheus, which they have on that list for some reason. So, I mean, Best of all time. I don't know if I'd put Morpheus on there.
And speaking of someone whose Matrix is in my top 3 probably of movies.
Yeah.
Like I think that is one of the most perfect movies that's ever been made. Morpheus is great. Best written character ever? No, I'm not going to buy that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because so much of the Matrix is the style of the movie and less about the dialogue and how it's written. And the dialogue's good and it's written well, but the Matrix made in a different style is a whole different movie. You know what I mean? So like the style of that is part of the movie. And so him saying like cool things, it's cool and all, but without the style, it's not that well written. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and well, especially if you take into account the stuff he was forced to say, like the rave when he gives his, speech at the beginning of the rave and all that crap, or the big.
Well, I don't believe those other 2 movies actually exist. So I'm talking about the first one.
The 3 other movies you mean?
Yeah. What?
The third one was so
you're
bad
breaking
you
up.
Don't even include it.
You're breaking up. I don't understand what you're saying. Yes, I definitely not. I was talking about the first movie.
Yeah.
Alone. It gets way worse when you add those other ones in there.
Right.
Yeah, so, take him right off.
Speaking of which, they have Tony Stark on there. I'd say the same thing with that. I mean, I don't know about the character's great, but that's mostly because of Robert Downey Jr.
Are you quoting an article written by a PR firm?
I don't know.
Or a young person.
Yeah.
But see, then they have Vito Corleone.
Young people have watched Godfather.
They have, I'm sure. But I mean, as far as if you're going to throw stuff in there, I mean, that's a good one. I'd say, yeah. Mm-hmm. Vito Corleone is one of those that's one of the best written ones. Yeah, I would say that. Then here's the topper, Jack Burton.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that one.
Yeah. I think every character in that movie was one of the best written.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty damn good.
Big Trouble in Little China should be a character on that list. Absolutely. Then they got Amy Grape, from What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I guess. Whatever. Frodo Baggins.
It was
I don't think Frodo.
I know. See, here's the thing. Like, there's a difference between, hey, that was a great movie, and this is a well-written. Are we talking about a well-written character, not a well-written villain or whatever?
I'd put Gandalf in there.
I mean, they're written fine, but I don't think the writing on some of these outshines the movie. You know what I mean? I'm like, some of these are just it's like, okay, we made a good movie and this is well written. Like The Matrix is a good movie, but there's nothing about the writing in there that outshines other aspects of the movie. You know what I mean? Like the writing meets the level of the movie, but there are times I think where the writing falls down. Let me think of an example. Oh, Expendables 4.
Back to the beginning.
See, I think of Frodo kind of like Turkey. Frodo is not there to be the flavor. He's there to carry the flavor that's, around him. That's really what he is. You put the gravy on the Frodo, and then you got something going. But Frodo by himself, Sam is the gravy. That's well, I was thinking Sauron, but I like it spicier. Kevin McAllister, come on, man. Tom Regan, Kylo Ren.
Oh no!
This list is crap. Where'd you get this list?
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Who the hell?
No, seriously. Does it say who wrote the article? Where it came from?
Let's see. Hold on a second.
I like whiny little bitches. Kylo Ren.
No, like I like the character. Like I understand where they were going with that character development.
Terrible writing.
That doesn't make it well written. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Like Anakin Skywalker was not well written in the prequels, but the actor did a fine job of acting what was given him. You know what I mean? Like,
did he?
I think he did. I think he did when you consider the director.
Yeah.
Because I've seen him in some other stuff, and I've seen him reprise the role, and he actually, I think he puts his best into it, and I really do enjoy that. I think that was Lucas.
We will have to agree to disagree.
Well, look at Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman was as wooden as you can get in Phantom Menace, And
There
that
was
was
not one redeeming quality in the entire prequel series. Not one
what are you
redeeming
talking
quality.
about?
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you
There were-
there.
You can
Yeah.
disagree with
Those-
me, but
All of
I'm
the
right.
lightsaber fights were better than the original series.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
were.
The creature design was very good.
If you make me not want to hang out long enough to see it, it didn't matter.
Oh, but you said there was nothing. There
said
was
nothing.
Lord Sidious. Lord Sidious, you can't deny.
I'd
that-
say yeah.
That
I'd
was
say
an amazing dude.
you'd have a much better argument for the sequel trilogy as opposed to the sequel
Yeah.
trilogy showed how good the prequel trilogy was.
By showing how bad it could have been.
Yes, exactly. Correct.
Which is something. Yeah.
Star Wars
that's-
after the original trilogy has just been a race to the bottom. And
Well,
I mean that
Star
in every
Wars-
way.
No, I
Star
know. We're
Wars-
just gonna do the original 3 and Rogue Trader or Rogue One, and
Right.
then
And
forget everything else.
And
Rogue
then
Trader.
do the original Trader and Rogue Trader.
And
Yeah.
Andor.
It jumps to an entirely different universe.
That's
We
right.
love Andor.
Rogue Trader was the best Star Wars ever.
Oh, you know,
I will tell you.
I saw, speaking of which, by the way, before I forget, hang on, Rich, because I want to make sure I get this out before I forget. I saw a video, what was it, yesterday, about talking about the original Warhammer. And I guess we're old enough now that the original stuff is you, if you're of a different generation, you can look back on it and go, wow, they had that, that kind of thing, And so they were talking about the wacky stuff that was in the original Warhammer, right? And a lot of the things like the fact that orcs weren't really like they are now. They were still goofy and stuff. But remember, in the original one, it wasn't like they were at war all the time. The orcs were just part of the galactic society, and kind of like the Tyranids were. They had dealings with people through the Zotes and all that.
Yeah, you could have a Zote mercenary.
Right. It was a different kind of setup, and then it became what it is over time with the different editions and stuff. I don't know that there were some people I saw in the comments who were saying, that they wish they had kept all the original stuff, or a lot of the original stuff, tradition and all this sort of thing. I don't know. I think they've actually done better with it, by doing what they've been doing. And I think they have paid homage to the old stuff by bringing some of that stuff back. You got the Amble, you got the Zote, you got the Squats, you got all that stuff. And they mentioned, the atmosphere given by the original John Blanche artwork, and all that stuff, and how great that was. For it was like everybody loved that. No, we didn't. We didn't love that stuff. We did not love that stuff. Looked like he spilled his hamburger on it. It was not good. It wasn't done. It was, it was usually half a sketch, kind of, and it usually looked like, what's her name? Cobain's wife. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Because he definitely stole, that for the Adeptus Sororitas thing that he did, and, the half-finished thing with that. And everything of his looked the same way, which is all right. That's cool. It gives a certain atmosphere and all, but it wasn't like it was drop dead gorgeous. It was Blanche. And so I think they've done a good job actually, moving that story along and defining it as it went along. I didn't see it as like this set canon in the beginning, that this is how. I'd always felt kind of nebulous, and it filled in a little more and a little more as time went on. So I don't know. I didn't know if you guys felt the kitschy or something for it in a way that
when you said original Warhammer, I thought you were talking about the fantasy universe, and I was like, oh, they want pygmies and dark elf slaves and stuff in there, because that's not PC in the modern era, is it?
Yeah. And that fifth Chaos God, I can't remember the name of it.
The Unbound one. Yeah.
Do you remember that the idea was? I remember when we were at GW, the idea they were floating around was that the Warhammer universe was actually a world in the Warhammer 40K universe. They just hadn't found it yet.
That world would be overthrown in seconds. I mean, you wouldn't even have
the feral planet.
You wouldn't even have to put a large force down there. One Space Marine could bring that entire planet into control.
Well, yeah. The idea was they hadn't found it yet. That it was an undiscovered,
They better
area.
pray nobody finds it.
They did write some fiction. No, they did write some fiction where a Space Marine was transported to the old world, and they looked at him and they's like, oh, he's this bizarre knight that has this Baroque armor, and the Space Marine, apparently he fell through some sort of warp flux or something like that. But it's actually a pretty interesting piece of fiction. But he the basically viewed them all as warp infested psychers because all the magic flying around and stuff like that. So it's a pretty interesting piece of fiction. I'll have to see if I can dig it up, but
I didn't remember that one.
Yeah, it's out there. It's a short story, or it's a piece of another story where
who wrote that one?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But a Space Marine does get moved to the old world, and the view of the old world looking at him, I believe it was something to do with Nurgle's garden, if I remember correctly. There was a Space Marine gets taken to Nurgle's garden, and he gets shown a vision of the old world or something of that nature. I can't quite remember, but I know it was written. I'll dig it up. I'll see if.
I also remember the crossover they did with Paranoia. They had a Paranoia adventure where you ran into some orcs, some 40K orcs.
Really? I don't remember that one.
Yeah, because the orcs were just bored. They would put on like jetpacks and go fly around blasting the like the vegetation around there or whatever, and like the troubleshooters ended up going through some kind of portal or whatever, and you ended up like fighting some orcs. Again, this was all way back, Rogue Trader, everything was on the table kind of thing. It was and that was well before they started defining what a lot of the lines were.
Yeah, because in the beginning of it, and it wasn't that long a period, as I remember. It was like a kind of a short period where, like you said, Mark, everything was everything, and you could have like the right guard stick can could be your
Well, I mean, it started as, hey, how do we put fantasy? Let's take Warhammer Fantasy and put it in a science fiction thing. Like that's where Warhammer 40K came from, and I think they were surprised at how it caught on. Like it blew up and became more popular than fantasy. And so then they're like, oh, what are we going to do? And so that's when you start formalizing what are the factions and formalizing, what does this look like? Because, Rogue Trader wasn't it. So second edition, I think, is where they really started, formalizing things and
what do you miss from that? What do you miss from Rogue Trader? If there's something that you miss from Rogue Trader you really, really would want back.
Man, see, I don't really know. Like, I treat Rogue Trader with a lot of nostalgia because that's what I started on. I don't know how great it was, like from the points buy and from the system and everything. Like, I like that it was this kind of kitchen sink thing, but the newer versions have a little bit more structure because they're trying to balance the armies and whatnot. That's what I'll say. Like, Rogue Trader was an arms race. Right, because we all had our factions, and when a new thing came out, we had to go buy the new thing. So, like, I remember the first time I bought one of those metal dreadnoughts. You know what I'm saying? We brought it over to Russell's house to play, and I like kind of hid it in this like paper house. It was a piece of terrain, and it was like this big reveal, like, ha ha, I have a dreadnought, and and it was like, oh no, this is new. We've never seen this, and you and I thought the original Terminators looked dumb. And you were like, no, man, they're so good. Look at the rules. We gotta let's split a box. And so you and I went in and bought our first box of Terminators, and we played with those. And I fell in love with the assault cannon, and they were hard as nails. You know what I mean? Man, these things are great. I still thought they looked dumb compared to the regular Space Marines, but they've since way grown on me. Like I said, I don't know that there's one thing, and I will say the new editions have really done a good job of reaching back and bringing some of that nostalgic stuff into the fore. So I want some Zotes. That's what I want.
Well, they kind of have a Zote back, don't they? They brought it back. They brought the Zote back for the.
But that was for that other game, though. Yeah, but I mean, that's how do I play a Zote or an army of Zotes or a unit of Zotes in 40K?
For Blackstone Fortress. I have it for Blackstone Fortress. It is an awesome model. If they did more of those models, like whoever sculpted it, they did a fantastic
Right, but
job.
I just don't want a model like a Jacaro. There's a model of a Jacaro, and like that's cool, and that's enough to scratch the itch. But can I really play Jacaro as a faction or as a squad,
amazing,
or as you know what I'm saying? Like, I think they need to go in and have a bunch of these like mini factions, right?
I don't know what
the thing that I would be worried about, and I haven't played 40K in a very long time, so I don't know how much my opinion matters. But some of the
yours
stuff,
matters the most.
Whatever. So the right, exactly. It doesn't. The thing that I'm with you, Mark, is that there's a nostalgia aspect, but the problem that I would have is when they bring some of that back, is ruining what it was. And something like the Jacaro, which was ridiculously overpowered,
right,
for what they were, right, and is wonderful for that reason. If they brought it back, where would they ruin it? That would be my fear. Like, some things are just so great in the nostalgia, they need to stay there.
Well, but see, that was going to be my question, is because I love the idea of them, but I love the idea of them not because they're so powerful, which they are. I mean, if they were organized, who would win? Who would beat them? Who could beat them, right? No one could, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that they're so unpredictable, you know, so you have to roll like a dice at the beginning of each turn to whether they just teleport away and just leave, or, you know, what they do. Yeah. They just sit there and eat a banana, or they make a defense laser, you know. But I love those weird things. That was cool. The Jacaro, to me, were always really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because they were so unknown in a way, and unknowable, and so beyond everybody else's stuff in a weird way.
There was an element to Rogue Trader, or those early days of 40K, that was much more of a sandbox than you have today. Now,
it was almost a role-playing game setting, but not quite.
Right. Yeah. And I understand, in order to make the game functional, evolutions had to happen, and, you know, structures have to be in place to make it, you know, more of a sustainable thing. But if there was something that I missed about that, it would be that aspect of it.
Yeah, you do lose a bit of that, you know. Yeah,
it's so well defined now.
Yeah.
That, you know, like I remember seeing, it was a diorama or something where it was like mercenaries, and it had a space marine and an elf and an orc and maybe a squad or something, you know, and like, oh, that was a really cool concept. That doesn't fit anywhere in the current regime. Like, you could never really have like a mercenary with some space marines in it, or some Eldar, or squad, you know. I'm like, you know, that doesn't really fit any of the lore now that it kind of did back then. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Is there anything you wouldn't want back?
John Blanche.
Alive.
I'm kidding. Like, I don't think 40K would be 40K without John Blanche. So, like, I know, but I'm being facetious.
Isn't that a weird thing?
We love you, John Blanche. You know.
Isn't that a weird thing? Because I do not like his artwork.
Right.
By and large, I don't like his artwork.
Yeah, it's not my style.
It does
it's a little dirty and non-precise, but it does a great job of giving you the feeling of the piece, right? So, like, yes. So, you know, and he was very influential in Space Marine bikes and the flavor of the system. So, what wouldn't I want from
him and his love of that crap, man?
I know. But that's one of the things I liked about 40. You knew that, like, one of the guys who worked on the game just like rode a motorcycle, loved motorcycles, and now we have.
Well, you knew he looked like a squat and rode a Harley. That's what it was. Yeah. And loved Kurt Cobain's wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, it was one of those things that was my childhood, and we didn't get into it when we were like 10, like a lot of the kids that in the second generation, you know, these 10, 11, 12-year-olds who are playing Warhammer. We were all 15, 16, 17 when we got into Warhammer, right? We were already teenagers with part-time jobs, and that's where all our money went, was buying new Warhammer models and stuff like that.
Driving up to Laurel.
Which was where the first US-based Games Workshop store was at a mall in Laurel, Maryland.
The worst mall.
It is the worst mall. They tore that whole mall down now. Like, the structure is gone, and it's still shopping center stuff, but like the mall no longer exists. They redeveloped that whole area. I was there a couple of years ago. I was like, oh,
I
there
would
used to
like
be a
to.
mall there.
I would like to take that back. That's not the worst mall. The worst mall in the world was in Glen Burnie.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Glen Burnie, Maryland.
The one in Laurel, though, had that Subway that you could get. This was back in the day. You could get the meatball sub with sausage as well.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you remember that, but it was good.
That's right. Yeah, because we'd be at the mall playing, and then Warhammer, and then we'd go over to the food court, and it was either Subway or the Chinese joint is where I would eat most of my lunches or whatever. But yeah, we spent a lot of time at the Laurel Center Mall playing Warhammer.
Yes, we did. Yep, spending everything we had. Yes, we did.
It was good times.
It was good times, man. And you did have some, I don't know, get back to the movie thing. There were some good things that came out of it. There were some, but see, there was a lot of swing and misses. There was a lot of those. But it seems like you had more.
What are we talking about? Specific movies?
In entertainment in general, really.
Okay.
There was a lot of those, but it seemed like there was a bit more willingness to take a chance, maybe. For something different, because you think about, now I know Alien was a little bit before the 80s, but I mean, considering that, Predator, Terminator, Big Trouble, The Thing, all that stuff, all those things that we love so much, 40K, all that stuff, that was really kind of during that time frame. And it seemed like you had more of a willingness to try new things, whereas now it seems more like everything's a derivation of something else. More than anything.
I think back then there was this kind of understanding of, hey, let's make an action movie. We're going to put Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. He's going to kill a bunch of bad guys and do a bunch of one-liners. They understood what they were making, right? They were like, cool, Commando is like, one-liners and some cool action scenes, and he's going to go save his daughter. Go. Right? And so you knew exactly what you were getting with that movie. Okay, First Blood Part 2, we're going to send him back to Vietnam. He's going to kill a bunch of guys. He's going to rescue some dudes. It's not funny. There was less like one-liners, right? But they were like, oh, no, this is, a redemption story for John Rambo, right? But they were just like, cool, let's give people what they want. Like, he's going to use a bunch of different guns. He's going to use them with an arrow. He's going to stab him with his knife. Cool. And I feel like there was this certain workman-like, we know what we're making. We're going to give the fans what they want. Here it is. Nowadays, I feel like they're overthinking everything. We don't want to offend somebody, so we can't do X, Y, and Z. We don't want to, we got to make it PG-13 so that the maximum audience can go see it. And it just feels like there's a lot of self-constraint while they're looking for that breakout hit.
Whereas, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it, is that it's curbed the creativeness that way. Maybe there's a good bit of that. Yeah.
Sean,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I did a bit of research on the Space Marine in the Warhammer universe. It was a piece of fiction, and it was Nurgle's Garden. I always remember that correctly. So Nurgle's Garden apparently exists in both the Warhammer or universe, right? And it was a story involved.
You're freezing up, bro.
Yeah, we're losing your audio. Like, slow down and try that again. All
right. So it was a story regarding Horticus Slimux, the guy on the snail who tends the garden. And they said that they saw a silver knight who could shoot blue fire, and the intention was that it was a gray knight. It might have been Caldor Drago, who's lost.
Oh, so this was from. I gotcha. Okay, so this was from not earlier on. This was from way later on when they made the Grey Knight stuff. And okay. I thought you meant something like way earlier where they had some piece of fiction they wrote that way. I gotcha. Yeah, because I've heard that too, where he fights across chaos and goes through all the realms and all that stuff. Yeah, I gotcha.
That's where I was going with that. So I didn't mean to stop the flow of the conversation, but
no, that because I was wondering what you were talking about, if it was something that I had missed or something, But yeah, no, I know what you're referring to now. Okay, I gotcha. All right. Well, I think we've solved all our problems and answered all our questions, haven't we?
Yes.
I don't think there's anything else to.
Yeah, so we're closing the podcast down. There's never going to be another episode. We're done. We've done it all. Thanks for joining us.
So who is? All right, real quick. Can you, and if you can, who would be your best written character of all time?
In films or anywhere?
Just anywhere.
Oh, Walter White.
The Emperor.
Yeah.
The Emperor. Really?
No.
I was going to say.
Jesus. It's got a hell of a lot of
I'm sorry, are we not taking this assignment seriously?
No,
I guess
I was.
I am taking it seriously. It's the most read book in the history of humankind. So
Yeah, but
I found it pedantic and derivative.
He's only
That's
in
right.
it
It
for
was
part of
inspired by Dune. Come on.
Yeah.
By
Clearly, Jesus is just a shadow copy of Paul Muad'Dib.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I would say that the Christian Bible does owe a lot to Dune. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Wandering in the desert. I mean, come on.
My name is a killing word. I must ride the sand.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know that there is an answer to your question, at least from my side, Sean. I can't think of one person that I would say, here's the best written character. It for me, it's like saying, what's the best movie? Well, it depends on genre that we're talking about.
It does, but I think if I have to give an answer to it, and I do because I'm the one who brought it up, so I should have to, right? The one I would put out there is probably Melkor.
You know who I would put out there, and purely because this was my answer on the last question you asked, Bugs Bunny.
Well, Melkor.
There you go. I'd actually go with that. Sure.
Melkor is just an amalgam of Lucifer and a bunch of other characters.
It doesn't matter what he's an amalgam of, because he is. He is. I mean, that's where Tolkien got his, and of course the Bible got it from Dune. But I still would say that Tolkien wrote Melkor the best of any character I've ever read. I've often said I've never read anyone else who could write for God or Satan the way that Tolkien can. He writes it so that when I'm reading his stuff, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I could see that, in a passage or something. I could absolutely see that because he writes it so well.
Yeah.
No one else has come close to that. No one.
No, I agree. He was definitely one of the top 10 writers at least in the modern era, if not all time. His ability, it's just because his background was so diverse. He had such a background in myth and religion and all sorts of different things that he, a professor. So I mean, back when that actually meant something.
Yeah. He wasn't some North Pacific, booze hound drug head that
Hey.
Andy was he also had a depth of experience. He was a soldier in World War I. He had a depth of experience. He was a college professor. He was a soldier. He was born in Africa. He's from all over the place. He had just such a diverse history that it allowed him, and he had the talent to put all of that history and all of his experience and all of his learning and put it through his words in a way that was accessible to so many different people. I agree with you. He was a one-time wonder of a combination of experience and ability that you just won't see in some writers. People come close, but he really does stand on top of the heap, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's something. There's an extra level to his that just transcends the other stuff that at least I've read or experienced or seen or any of that. Is just his writing was really well done. And that's the example I use is for the ultimate villain, which would be, the devil, which is Melkor.
It's interesting you choose Melkor because, there's a lot of characters I'd say that he wrote very well. And Melkor, while the Silmarillion, and the stories of that elder age really are, they were his passion, right? That's what he really wanted to make popular, was that history of the universe via Middle Earth. I'd say his writing for characters like Samwise Gamgee but
see, Samwise, this is the reason I say Melkor, is because Samwise, when you bring it down more to an earthly level, when you bring it down more to a mortal level, that kind of thing, it's easier for someone like that to have a connection with that character. You can empathize with them a little bit more.
Yeah.
When you go to someone like Melkor, it's easy, really easy, to
He's
go
a
off the
god.
deep end on one side or the other, right?
Yeah.
His was so well done. And the fact that when you're writing for something that's smarter than you, it's really hard to pull that off, because how can you do that, right? He did it really well for that character. And that's the reason I put that up there, is because you're going for something that's beyond you, you know?
Do you like Tolkien's writings because he had a dragon? Like, what if C.S. Lewis had a dragon in his writings? Would he be
I don't
up
know who
there?
C.S. Lewis is.
Yeah. He was some hack who tried to rip off Dune.
But he's just going to relate it back to Paul Muad'Dib. That's all for him.
That's
Fair enough.
That's the expanse of my reading, is Dune and Lord of the Rings.
Dune and Lord of the Rings.
For our Frank Herbert fans, we don't love this podcast because we're so loving of Frank Herbert that all things lead back to 1966. I mean,
I do look. I like Dune and all that. I'm just giving it a hard time because of the fans. The fanatics about that.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm looking forward to the next one, the next iteration of Dune. Did they push that back?
Yeah, next year. Yeah, next year.
Okay.
It was supposed to be Thanksgiving, and now I think
right. Apparently, Muad'Dib's name is a killing word, but he can't write. So while they're on strike, he's not strong enough to overcome the union.
Yeah,
strike kills for financials.
Paul Muad'Dib sitting there getting visited by both the navigators and the mafia.
Calling him a scab. Scab. What does that even mean?
Anyway, all right, boys. Well, and where was the mafia in that setting? There should have been some criminal element. They really didn't have one.
Yeah, the Navigator film, I guess, would be considered the mafia. I would think.
No,
because they controlled all the transport. So it's like you either had to them or you weren't getting anywhere.
I mean, you got some of the gangs in Necromunda, which is starting to explore that a little bit, but they're very localized to that one world.
Yeah. There's nothing mafia-esque about the Navigators. There's. I mean, if you're talking, they really didn't have anything like that.
No, like I said, we've got the Arbites, but we don't have the foil to the Arbites.
The High Lords of Terra would be like the mafia, in my opinion. They're the power behind the power, right? So you either cozy up to the High Lords, or all the families are fighting each other, like the different.
That would be like saying Congress has criminals in it. I'm just not buying that.
Yeah, I consider them more like the UN.
So true, Mark. So true.
Ineffectual and stupid.
Only if you get paid in gold bars and cash. I mean, and Mercedes.
So. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to that Space Marine game, man. I really am. As a non sequitur.
Yeah, and we may even figure out how to stream that.
That'd be awesome.
Was it a 3-player?
4.
Yeah.
4-player?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we going to find 4 people that would want to play that? I wonder.
I don't know. I mean,
I
can imagine.
Maybe and then when we get it, it's going to have a huge skill tree. It's
dang it.
Pages and pages
and pages out to learn it. You know what? For Space Marine, I'd muddle through.
It'll be Mark and Robbie.
Yeah, we had a conversation before we went on air about how I prefer the first-person shooters, where it's like I got 2 guns and some grenades to choose from, not this big skill tree.
We should have talked about
inventory thing. We should have talked about that's why I like Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War more than say some of the other ones like Borderlands.
I did get a release date for the Dark Tide game, the one where it's kind of a first person shooter. You play different, like Ogrin and stuff like that. That might be something we could test the stream on. That comes out, I believe, next month or the month after. But I finally got a release date for it in my inbox. So
okay,
waiting for it on the Xbox platform, and they're going to release it.
All right,
but there's
keep us
another four player game. So
yeah, that'd be cool to do that. That
Yeah.
would. All right. All right,
All right,
boys.
gentlemen.
Get out of here. Bye.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.